Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December edition of our customer webinar series. Today, Jon Winters, product architect for BLOX Total CMS, will show off what's new and improved in that product. BLOX Total CMS is a powerful all-in-one solution that allows you to simultaneously produce your print, web, mobile, and live e-edition products. We have lots of new functionality to discuss, including changes to print trimming and an all-new social media broadcast feature. Jon has a lot to tell you about, so I won't belabor the intro. In the room, we also have Christine Masters, our Director of Product Development, Paige Ruba, Marketing Specialist, and Gary Saznicki, our Regional Sales Manager. I'm Aaron Gillette, Marketing Director at townnews.com. We'll cover the formal presentation in about 30 minutes, after which we'll take questions. At any point during the presentation, you can type a question into the chat box, but we'll hold off on answering them until the end of the show. Take it away, Jon.
Thank you, Aaron. So here is our brief agenda for today. We'll try and keep this short and hopefully even under 30 minutes if that works for us. We are going to be talking about some things that are different in the browser interface that work with print trimming and previews of that. We're going to talk about that social media broadcast tool that we finally got in BLOX Total CMS, and some things with the syndication tool and a few more features as well. So that's kind of our outline, and we'll jump straight into it. First, trimming is now available in the browser. So I'm going to jump over to a browser view here, and if there was a particular set of text that I wanted to get rid of, select that text, click the little print trimming tool, and then it now shows up with this scissors in front and highlighted in red. So we've had trimming available inside of Adobe InDesign and Adobe InCopy for quite some time. Now we have trimming available inside the browser. Again, trimming allows the web view of this story to contain that text, but the print view to not have it. And that's because print space is at a premium, and we can have as long a stories as we want on the web. If there was something you wanted to untrim, just select it again, click the trimming tool, and now it's no longer trimmed. So feeding into that, we have depth count. So I'm looking at the print tab in the browser interface, and we used to have somewhere right about here a depth count. This is now moved to the bottom of the interface. If you don't have that turned on, you'll just need to go up here and tell it to show stats. Now, show stats has actually existed for many, many versions. It just is a little more robust now, because as text is trimmed, you'll see now there's a count of the words that are for the print side and the website. So you can see here that that paragraph that I trimmed there, or the paragraphs that I trimmed there, have been removed. So you get these two different depths. The depth here is still the inch depth for print, because there isn't a print depth in web. So that's how the show stats works. We're going to go talk about another thing with the preview here, just to kind of show you where we're at. This outline here that I am running through, we'll make that available to everybody, so if you want to share that at your sites, you'll be able to see that. So the other part that we have in that stats is a preview function. So if we had text that was, say for example, noted out, so I will notes. We got notes in the last version of the browser. And let's say I want to note this entire paragraph. So there is that, and I'll note that. When you have all the notes and you have all the trim text, looking through this browser view can be a little confusing per se. So we now have a new preview function down here, and I can preview this for web, and this has the notes removed, because the notes don't go online, and the trimmed text is here. So in the web view, this is 933 words, but I could also go and look at the print view, and in print view, I am 847 words. So again, this has the trimming removed, but the notes are also removed. And so this is going to be very nice for sites that are doing basically all their editing in the browser, and they needed to go in and remove some extra text. This is a nice way then to see what that text looks like that they have either noted out or trimmed. Moving right along, we're going to look at the social broadcast tool. Social broadcast has existed on the hosted side of BLOX CMS for quite some time. There is some setup involved, and I'm going to jump back to the slide here to basically overview and then talk about the setup, and then we'll see it. So there's some setup involved in the hosted side. We'll see that here, and then inside the asset manager on BLOX Total CMS, once you have the channels created, then you would just click the channels. The content would then move to hosted at its designated time, and hosted would actually do the tweeting or the Facebook broadcasting. Configured, I'll show you that part first here. The other tab will have a choice called Social Broadcast. And so here is the broadcast accordion, and it's controlled by sections. So for example, right now, I only have as sections that I can broadcast the business section. So if I were to now go back to other, now broadcast is available because my assets are in that particular section. That's just the way I had it set up to test things. Then if I wanted to broadcast this, I would click the check boxes for the channels that I wanted to broadcast to, and then any kind of extra text that I wanted to include, save the asset, and then once this particular asset goes online, then the hosted version would actually handle the broadcasting. There is a one-time only configuration. Basically, you get the broadcast channels added and hosted. Then in BLOX Total CMS, somebody with administrative privileges, you use linked sites to connect connect the appliance to hosted. And then in that dialog, there is an opportunity to import the broadcast channels that you had set up over in hosted. And there is help on that process in the help site, bloxcms.com. Then in the browser interface, this in BLOX Total CMS, these are our 3 steps. The broadcast does not happen until the asset has made it online to your hosted BLOX site. If you wanted to broadcast something early, then you might want to use the feature that we added several versions ago with your web, with your workflows that says BLOX syndication. So you could actually syndicate the story early, go ahead and do the broadcast early. You'd have a permanent link then, and then as you continue to edit the asset, the BLOX syndication wouldn't update the hosted version until the very end. You need to keep in mind that the assets need to have section tags, need to be web ready. We need to have the site tag added to it, and then it has to be past the start time for the asset to go online. And then if those 5 things are met and you've checked or requested the syndication in BLOX Total CMS, then you'll get a syndication fee. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is we now have in the syndication tool, we have agate subcategories. For those of you that aren't already aware of it, in the last version we added to the syndication tool in BLOX Total CMS the ability to get access to the Associated Press assets from within BLOX Total CMS, not using the web feeds agents. Now, the problem with the web feeds agents that all of our sites are using is the fact that Associated Press has stopped updating that tool. That tool also imports everything into BLOX Total CMS, and that's a big drain on the system considering it has to add thousands and thousands of assets daily and then also purge them off daily. So the syndication tool allows us to get just the pieces that we want to use. There are several other advantages of the syndication tool other than the fact that everybody's going to need to go to it at some point in time. And that includes the fact that when somebody uses an asset, there'll now be a mark on it to indicate that that asset has been moved over to BLOX Total CMS. Another huge advantage for it is that when you import import an asset that had child photos, it goes ahead and downloads all the child photos at that same time. So one of the problems that we had with the last release that was, preventing some sites from using AP syndication, AP assets and syndication tool, is that there wasn't a nice way to see the agate assets. So now what we have on the syndication tool is anything that comes in with an ANPA category that indicates that it is agate will now be having a little agate subcategory. And you should be able to see that in the search terms on the right-hand side of that slide, that there is agate content there. One other thing that was hurting sites from being able to use this new Associated Press feed is that the assets died after 3 days. They now live for 31 days inside of the syndication tool, and then you can add them to your BLOX Total CMS site at any point in that 31 days. We still have the issue with AP. This is an AP issue, that if you want the photos downloaded, you still need to do that within 72 hours of the start time. But again, all child photos download high-res versions if you will stop using the web feeds and start using the syndication tool. There's also documentation in the outline that we have that shows you how to add that syndication channel. In the next version of the syndication tool, we're going to add some additional search capabilities to make this even a better product. So we're going to move on, and one of the things that we got as part of the CMS update is that if you want to create a link asset, link assets now have a new checkbox that says open in new window. This is great if you're using link assets that are pointing to some third-party site so that you're not taking viewers away from your own website. The other thing that happens if you're using the show summaries command, show summaries then allows us to see the image summaries again. It used to be that the first child image would show up in show summaries, then that kind of went away, but we have that back. Next slide is talking about the programming code that I work on, which is the BLOX Total CMS plugin. With the appliance update that we're talking about today, which is what we would call the 2.10 update, there is a change to the way the inline notes work, and that requires you to use the plugin that is at least 5.12.42. If you're using inline notes in InDesign and InCopy, and if those notes are writing back from InDesign and InCopy, if you're not using that newer version of our plugin, the notes will show up as regular text inside of the browser interface. We did a webinar back in October, so 2 months ago. Since that time, we've done, about 50 additional tickets and changes to the plugin code. Typically, if I'm not on site, we're releasing several versions a week, and those are available at any time by asking anybody on the BLOX Total CMS team that you would like the code update. We typically force those out to sites when they're having some kind of a problem that we fix, but otherwise we kind of allow the site to choose when they update. The help.bloxcms.com site includes the outline to the release notes, and the slide has a link to it. Some of the big changes that we have added in the past 2 months since we did our last webinar, if you're using threaded frames on a layout, say for example, you for some kind of a layout feature, you're not really jumping the story to a different page, but you are going from one frame of the body copy to another. That used to break the segmentation for Live E-Edition. That should be working now. Image statuses, which was our improved version of swapping out toned images. that has been changed so that it works with things other than only JPEG. So we had a site, for example, that did all of their toning as TIFF files. So we now support that and several other image formats. It used to be that if you were checking in a parent asset inside of Adobe InDesign and there were children on the page, that it wouldn't check the children in at the same time unless you were using Adobe InCopy assignments. Now it checks in all parts of that asset, so the parent and all of its children. That'll speed things up. InCopy itself now launches a little faster because we took out some things that it was loading that it didn't need to load. And we have decided to disable the track changes functions. And the reason is that the Adobe InCopy Creative Cloud 2015 version has some pretty serious bugs with track changes, and so we have disabled track changes so that anybody updating to that cloud version doesn't crash. We've also got some new text variables for folios. So some things back in the browser now that we'll talk about that changed. There had been a bug that if you were printing assets from the browser, if there was a large image attached, sometimes the printing size of the text, this is only for printing out of the browser assets, that text would change, and sometimes it would do some strange image cropping. That's been fixed. Also some configuration things. If you had made a related content type and you wanted to change that from, say, a web only or a print only to both or any other kind of combination like that, pretty much once the related content type was created, you could no longer change its environment. That's been fixed, and you can swap these things back and forth. And if you're using the workflow, new feature to BLOX Syndication, which is a really awesome thing. If you're not haven't looked at that in the workflows, you need to take a look at that. That allows you to post early and then not have any updates till the final version. It's a great feature. One problem that we had with it is that if you chose to unblock the syndication at any given step, the workflow wouldn't save that, but that's now fixed. So again, what have we released here? This has all been things inside the browser interface with the appliance update that's available now to be installed. We get trimming directly from the browser. You can preview a print version or a web version within the browser without the notes and the trims displaying, at least not being highlighted for the trims. It's very easy to find agate assets in the syndication tool from an AP feed. AP assets now last in the syndication tool for 31 days before they fall out. And link assets open in a new window as an option. And finally, the biggest deal is the thing that we still needed the hosted blocks for, and now that has been taken care of, and that is social broadcasts from within BLOX Total CMS. So that is what I have to present. I'm going to let Aaron talk about staying connected with Town News, and then we'll open it up for questions.
We can open it up for questions right now, John. We do have a few questions that have already come in. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, and we will answer all questions. The first question is, what server version and InDesign plugin version is this webinar covering?
So InDesign plugin would basically be anything past 5.12.42. That's kind of the minimum that you need in order to use the inline notes with this version, okay, of the appliance. And then appliance-wise, this is considered 2.10.
Okay. Can we go ahead and set up our broadcast channels in BLOX Online now so they'll be ready when the feature comes to TCMS, or should we wait?
Do it now. And you can use that feature online now. It's existed for some time. It's a very appreciated feature, so go ahead and set that up now. Again, when we can view the slide notes, the link is there. Otherwise, go to help.bloxcms.com and search for broadcast, and I believe it's the first link about adding the broadcast channels.
Okay. Is Parent and All Children Check-in out now, or is it coming soon?
That would exist in that .42 version. So it's out now. We've got sites that use it. And again, this is if you're checking in with the dialogue. So sites that use the dialogue to advance the workflows, that's what we're talking about. So if you check in the parent, the children will check in as well.
Okay.
With or without using assignments. In the past, it only worked with assignments. Now it works without assignments.
The Daily American doesn't use InCopy. Do we still have access to the social broadcasting tools?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you untrim trims made in the browser on the InDesign page? And do trims made on the page show differently in the browser than those made on the browser?
Nope, it's completely bidirectional. You can do the trimming in InDesign, in InCopy, or in the browser, and there's really no way to know necessarily who did the trim and when it happened, other than if you start going back through and looking at asset revisions. So it all works just fine, no appearance differences. Now, you may want some appearance differences, but we're not doing that yet.
Okay. Is 2.10.0 ready to go or still coming soon? My appliance still shows 2.10.5 as beta.
Yeah, it is still listed as beta. This is the fifth revision of it. They added some additional things here several times, fixed a couple of bugs early on, and they've added a couple other things that we were able to push out early to get them to you now, as opposed to waiting until the next release, which will probably not be until January sometime. As far as we know, it is a good release. The last things that they added were improvements. They weren't bug fixes. We're real happy.
Okay. What file types are supported in image statuses?
Yeah, and yeah, I know that it will do JPEGs and TIFFs. It'll also do PNGs, and all those work just fine. They are regular images. You can also import, let it handle PDFs and EPS files, but then image statuses will grump because it can't determine what the resolution of those files are because they have no resolution. So I have an open ticket on that, but it will at least do TIFFs and PNGs in addition to JPEGs, and those three are really the main image formats.
When will the trim directly from the browser be available? I don't have the little scissors icon or the preview for web and print.
Yeah, so that's part of the appliance 10 or 2.10 update, which includes, I'm sorry to get technical here on you, BLOX CMS 1.22.7. It's just all these version numbers. And so as soon as your appliances get updated to that version, you'll have those tools.
Okay. If we have multiple BLOX CMS sites, can BLOX Total CMS be set up to send certain assets to certain sites, not just the main site?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. The normal way to do that would be to have potentially multiple workflows that would do it automatically. Otherwise, if your BLOX Total CMS site just gets added or just has some additional site tags added to it, then you can manually pick and choose which additional sites you would like those assets to go to. In fact, there is a feature coming in Page Tracker. It's going to probably be another 6 months till it sees the light of day, but that will show you which sites, so when you're looking at the budget view in Page Tracker, which sites assets have been sent to, all in one view for a given print day. If you need help adding those site tags, I would suggest adding or creating a support ticket on support.townnews.com, and then we can add additional site tags to your BLOX Total CMS system. So long as it is a site that is a hosted BLOX site, we can make that happen. Good question.
Will trimming in the browser affect rule sets in any way?
No, trimming has always been a pretty straightforward thing in terms of the rule sets. I don't know of any site whose rule sets don't already support trimming. I don't know of any that don't support it. If there is some, again, file a support ticket, and we'll get somebody on the BLOX Total CMS team to make sure your rule sets support trimming. The worst case I think I have seen is a couple sites tried to trim within related content, and that's not supported because the browser interface doesn't support it. But all within an article asset, which is or an image caption, it should just work. And if it doesn't, let us know, and we'll get in there and modify the rule set so that it does. Write back is also completely automatic. There was never anything that needed to happen for sites to get write back of trimming.
What 4 new variables are available specifically?
Oh, okay. This is 4 of a set that we're going to get added in some coming versions. I believe in 5.15 is when I'm going to add the rest of them. But there is a M2, D2, Y2, and these are forced 2 digits for month, day, and year. So if it was July 4th of 2006, it'd be 070406. And then there's also a Y4, which is a 4-digit version of the year. Now, the reason that we added the year ones, most sites already had some way of handling either a 2-digit or a 4-digit year, but it was really inconsistent across the sites. So we added the 2 and the 4-digit year just as a way to keep it consistent moving forward. If any site needs to get access to them, they're there now. The month and the day was something that a couple sites had requested, was to have these 0 leading 2-digit year, month and year. So that's what they are, D, M, and Y2, and then also Y4.
Okay. Will the trimmed text show as trimmed in the revision history, highlighted in red?
Yes.
Okay.
If you open up a previous revision, it'll look just like that revision looked like. Same way notes will be highlighted in the yellow.
So are we clear to install 2.10.0-5 in production whenever we're ready?
Whenever you're ready, it's clear.
Does trim work only?
And one advantage, just so everybody understands, sorry, Aaron, the way we release software, we'll release software for the appliances as a beta. Once at least 3 production sites have been using it for 7 days, then it goes golden. When we do minor updates to it, that 7-day clock starts all over again. And so that's the reason why this 2.10 hasn't gone golden already. We had a few things that we wanted to add here last week, and so we pushed another beta because the software was available, and this way you guys didn't have to wait another month to get it. So if a couple more sites, we've got, I think, just one on this .5 because it was just released late last week, but if a couple more sites get it added, then it'll go golden here maybe first part of next week.
Does trim work only for print and notes for print and online?
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, so trimming is print trimming. In fact, the scissors icon, if you get a chance to hover over it, it'll actually say trim for print. And that removes that text for printing. And you can see this inside of Adobe InDesign by going to BLOX Total CMS, choose trimming and trim. It's basically the same function as what we now have in the browser. And then also in InDesign, there is a choice to either show all trims or hide all trims. And that's in that same trimming menu. So that's trimming is just for print. Notes works in both InDesign and in the browser. And anything that's turned into notes won't print, and anything that's turned into notes will not appear online.
Can you talk just a little bit, John, about like the actual use cases for trimming versus notes? Whereas like trimming is actually cutting things, whereas notes are for, internal notes between users or something?
Yes, that's exactly the case. So let's say, for example, you're doing a briefs package and you've got this 10-inch story and you only want to use about 2 inches of it in the briefs package. So you would trim for print the 8 inches of that particular article. When that article goes online, all 10 inches of the print depth would go online, but in print, only those 2 inches of the article that remain. You can trim words, you can trim sentences, characters, paragraphs, large quantities, small quantities of text. So trimming allows the web version, which we have no space limitations, to have the whole story, but the print version to be shorter because we have very limited space in print. So that's trimming, and that's a really neat feature that as far as I know, only BLOX Total CMS has in terms of CMSs. Notes is a more common feature, and that is primarily used as a way to go in and leave notes that you have checked the accuracy of information to put in a CQ, for example. We do have a couple sites that will basically edit via notes, that they'll take out sentences, then leave it as a note to indicate what was there, and then add the new sentence in its place. But primarily they are indicate that this has been corrected, or this would be a better word to use instead, but more along the lines of communication. Thank you, Christine.
Our stories go from NewsEdit Pro to BLOX. Can the trimming tool be added to NewsEdit Pro?
No, so they must be a site that's not a BLOX Total CMS site. So you could certainly talk to your town news salesperson and discuss what would be involved in putting in BLOX Total CMS there. But no, that won't work. Trimming in InDesign requires BLOX Total CMS.
Would the trimming in the browser affect links inside the trimmed text in any way, or would those appear online normally?
Yeah, that'll be fine. I had to follow the question. So basically, you've got some text in the story. There is embedded inline link, and then you're trimming that out. That should be just fine. The trimming creates in the browser view just a span tag around that content that is ignored in hosted BLOX CMS, and that's ignored on your website. And so everything is there. There's just this ignored span tag around it. It's Adobe InDesign and the rule sets that find that span tag and say, whoa, we don't want to show this, and thus convert it in InDesign and InCopy to what's called conditional text. And then that conditional text is just hidden. So that should be fine.
Okay. Broadcast is linked to section tags. If you want to broadcast one article to multiple channels, do you need to duplicate the asset and put the separate section tags on the duplicates?
No, I would just simply... Oh, wait a minute. So ask the question again, Aaron.
Okay. Broadcast is linked to section tags. If you want to broadcast one article to multiple channels, do you need to duplicate the asset and put the separate section tags on the duplicates?
I wouldn't duplicate it because then you're watering down your analytics. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't also add the multiple section tags and then go in and broadcast to multiple channels. Does that sound right? Anybody else there in the room?
Well, actually, yeah, the way it works is, let's say you've got a separate Twitter account for your sports section and then another one for your main site. So if you have both sets of section tags on there, both broadcast channels should show up available in the broadcast accordion to use. So the one asset could then broadcast to both Twitter accounts.
Okay, that's exactly what I was trying to convey. Thanks. Makes more sense the way you said it.
Can the broadcast tool be set up to broadcast to social at certain times, or is it as soon as the asset is promoted?
My understanding is that it's as soon as the asset is sent online.
Right, and also...
The only way I would know how to... I don't know of any way to change that.
Well,
anybody else?
If there's an embargo time on it, it will wait until it actually goes online. So you can push it to the website early, but let's say it's not due to go online until 5 p.m. At 5 p.m., it will push out to the broadcast channel.
And we have one site who was going to do something like that, where they put stuff online at 12:30 a.m., 2:30 a.m., 5 a.m., and they would actually use start times to kind of chunk them up that way.
Okay.
But it would be related to start times.
Yeah, but nothing specifically related to broadcast itself, which is kind of what I thought the question was.
Yeah, there is not a separate schedule for the broadcast. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can you outline a use case where using a link asset would be preferable to simply linking from within story text?
Okay, so here's the way I like to consider these. So the syndication tool allows you to link to your own assets. You set up on your hosted BLOX website. So let's assume you've got a BLOX website. You set up in BLOX Total CMS a syndication channel pointing to that particular website. If you wanted to use an article that was a legacy article from before you started with BLOX Total CMS, you don't want to import that legacy article back into BLOX Total CMS and let it go up as a child yet again. That again would dilute your analytics on that link. So I recommend that those kinds of things always get imported as a link asset. And then the link asset can still be inline, the link asset can still be a child, but then it's pointing to the real asset as opposed to importing that asset. There's also some other things that I have seen with the online sites. The link assets have a different appearance than what a child potentially would. But the use case that I like is for linking to your own assets that are on hosted from before you installed BLOX Total CMS.
Yeah. I mean, another
Christine, you have another case?
John, another consideration on that is really how do you want it to look inside the article? I mean, link assets typically will show in a different spot unless you've inlined them.
Yep.
So if you want just within the text to have a link right there, that's fine. Also, I mean, some of this depends, are you linking off to a third party or internal content too?
Yep. And it's a way to create with the link assets, you know, if they're appearing as a child, if they're appearing as a sibling asset, as Brad pointed out there, they are going to appear differently than putting a link in the text itself, an inline HTML link.
Okay.
Next question.
It looks like that's all of the questions we've gotten.
That's fine.
Yeah. Going once, going twice. If you have a question, you can still type it in while I go through this. If you want to stay connected with us, we have an all-new documentation site. Actually, it's at help.bloxcms.com. We need to update that slide. Our support site is at support.tomnews.com or 800-293-9576. And we have a partner community, which is a great place to share ideas and talk about how you're using BLOX and BLOX Total CMS, and that's at community.tomnews.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. It looks like we have indeed answered all of the questions. So thanks everybody. John, we do have a couple of other TCMS webinars coming up, right?
We do indeed. So about 2 months from now, on February 4th, we're going to do a webinar for the BLOX Total CMS Appliance Release 2.11. That's going to get us the CMS 1.23 with some features there. That's also going to get us the page tracker update, which is considered, 0.9. Yeah, I had to think about this. The advantage of that page tracker update that gets us some extra MITF export things that some of our clients have wanted. It also gets us a gallery view of the pages. So if you're looking at in page tracker at a particular edition, you'd be able to see some larger previews all in blocks by section, and you can limit those so that you can only see one section at a time. There's some other filtering capabilities with that version of page tracker. There's some enhancements to the budget view that clients have asked for in that version of page tracker. Lots of neat stuff in that particular page tracker. We'll also be talking about the additional updates to the plugin for InDesign and InCopy at that particular point in time. And again, that'll be February 4th at the same 10:30 Central. And then on April 7th, that's 2 months later, we've got a combined webinar on live e-editions. So for quite some time, BLOX Total CMS can output segmented information on its pages to live e-editions, which makes a really nice user experience. And since it was first announced, live e-editions have gotten all kinds of additional features that people may not be aware of. So we're going to be going over those new features and how live e-editions can actually generate revenue for the paper. And then the InDesign component feeding that segmentation has also changed. And so it's going to be a webinar on best practices to feed from BLOX Total CMS in addition to seeing the revenue generating processes. So again, that's April 7th at 10:30 Central. Thank you for reminding me, Aaron.
No problem. And if you are signed up for our webinar list, we will send out invitations for both those webinars as we get closer. Again, Jon, thank you for walking us through all these features, and thanks to everybody for sticking with us through the technical issues. We'll try and make sure those are ironed out before the next webinar. So we will talk to you later. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.